Everybody here does a dog sport of some sort, and there are 10 really common problems that, irrespective of the sport that you partake in, as a coach, as a teacher, as a seminar instructor, you see consistently coming back over and over and over. And obviously, if you can understand which ones apply specifically to dog sports, there's obviously the 5 things that I talk about that are universally applicable to all dog training. So that would be lack of understanding, lack of motivation, lack of relationship, lack of boundaries, lack of physical ability. But there is 10 things specifically that relate to dog sports, and why you consistently see problems when your dog goes into competition. So there's no specific order of these, but what you see consistently and why you see a discrepancy from what your dog can do at home versus what your dog can do in competition will normally be something to do with one of these 10 things, okay? So the first one is shifting criteria. So when we're training dogs and training anything, we should be thinking about the pillars of effective training. So that is criteria, timing, your rate of reinforcement, and your obviously mechanical skills would be part of that, okay? But the biggest thing that we need to be making sure of and being clear to our dogs is what is the criteria, what is the for want of a better term, the rule that gets them the reinforcement. If we grey that criteria, that rule that gets them reinforcement, that will ultimately create confusion, frustration, ambiguity, and so forth, okay? And that will erode the dog's ring competition. So the fix is really simple. Be clear as you possibly can with your criteria that you've set for that behavior. So common examples of where people will shift criteria is when they're obviously competing. Okay, competing will often erode criteria because there's 2 opposing characters that when you train a dog. You have the person that's the dog trainer and you have the competitor. And the competitor is saying to you, nobody's done the round, go for the win! And the dog trainer is saying, no, your trainer said maintain criteria. And they're constantly butting heads, okay? They're constantly butting heads. And all of us, including myself, have fallen foul to one or t'other having the louder voice, okay? So it's really, the ideal goal is you have those 2 competing personalities in unison. But sometimes one's going to take precedence. Excuse me, if I'm running off for a ticket and my dog does a slightly slow sit where its foot is out to the left, am I going to go, no dog, that's incorrect? Of course I'm not. I'm going to go, screw it. I'm going to try and push through, okay? But the dog trainer in me will make a note of that and go, okay, I might have, been in competing mode, but I mustn't let that criteria slip to where it will eventually erode the whole picture, okay? So it doesn't matter what sport you partake in, criteria is absolutely imperative. Being clear as you possibly can with your criteria that you train, okay? Second thing that can impact your dog's performance on consistency or reliability, however you want to frame it, is motivation mismatch, meaning the dog either is lacking motivation or the dog's motivation is in misplaced. So motivation and arousal and drive, whatever terms we want to frame it, what we're looking for is the dog to be in the optimum state, really in the middle bit. If our dog is at the low end of the spectrum, it's going to underperform. We're going to see poor performance. And the same vein, if your dog is aroused, over-motivated, or the motivation is ill-placed, you're going to see discrepancy in performance. We're trying to constantly find that middle ground. That isn't necessarily your dog being calm. Okay, that's a common misplaced misconception that we need calmness. We don't need calmness. We need our dog in the optimum state of arousal. Whilst it might appear that the dog is calm externally, but the dog should actually be channeling all that energy and that desire into a given moment where it can perform at its best. A really good example, in agility is the dog doing a brilliant start line and waiting there diligently to explode off the start line. Or in obedience, it would be the dog holding a really good sit, waiting for that cue to go out to the retrieve article, or really sharp, smart distance control or signals where the dog's holding position, waiting really intently to wait for that cue. That's, for me, a really great way to visualize what the perfect balance between drive and accuracy is, yeah, okay? So third thing is that can often impact your dog's ability to perform in competition is a chaining challenge. Chaining is the necessary evil. That is the process of teaching your dog that they have to do A, B, C, D, and possibly E, depending on the sport that you're partaking in. All of those things in succession for one reinforcement. A very common issue that people have in dog sports is they have a discrepancy with what they do at home versus what they do in competition. Often what they do is they make home training very, very easy, i.e. very simple behaviours, lots of reinforcement, environment that's neutral or the dog is comfortable in. And then the comparison of taking the dog to a competition, they ask the dog to do far more for less reinforcement in an environment that's more challenging. If we actually were to, list what a dog show is to a dog, we are asking them a lot. Go to a strange location, obviously travel there in a vehicle for several hours depending on where you're going. Get out a strange location. There'll probably be several hundred dogs and several hundred people, and a strange environment with things moving around, etc. Give me your undivided attention and do exactly what you do in my garden. It's like, when you actually break it down to that, you think it's such a big ask. So a necessary evil is preparing a dog for that distinction and that difference in those environments, okay? That part of that is making sure that you're incorporating into your training what your dog is asked to do in competition. If your dog can't do it at home in the garden, do a complete round, do a complete competition run, they're never going to be able to do it in the real environment that matters. If they can't do it in your garden, that's your first indicator or your first benchmark to test your dog's ability. They're never going to be able to do it in competition, all right? Second thing is a reinforcement schedule discrepancy. So that would be related to the previous issue, meaning you're either rewarding too much or you're not rewarding enough. And it is that Goldilocks thing of, it was a little bit too hot, it was a little bit too cold, it's right in the middle. And again, that is dog dependent. So some dogs, depending on where they are in the training process, would need more reinforcement. Yeah, some dogs would need less depending on where they're at. But we want to always be mindful and intentional about what we're reinforcing. A common problem of reinforcement-based dog trainers is being frivolous and overindulgent with reinforcement. And therefore, you can create a grayness which can lead to underperformance. Yeah. Or the other end of the spectrum is being too lenient with reinforcement, not rewarding the dog enough in the environments that really matter. Okay. So next thing is environmental pressure. So environmental pressure can come in many forms. It can be other dogs, it can be other people, it could be the environment itself, it can be noises, it can be the texture of the ground. All the above can be environmental pressures. If you have a dog that feels pressure within an environment, the fix is not to make it a sports issue. It is to take it away from the sports issue and build your dog's confidence in relation to that environmental pressure. So my dog that's scared of other dogs, it's not about heel work, it's not about retrieve, it's not about jumps or whatever it is that you're doing, tracking or heel work to music moves. It's about the dog's confidence with other dogs. I need to take it out of context and work on my dog's confidence away from the competition prep, okay? Because if we make it about the work, we will sour that dog's experience of the work. The work has got nothing to do with my dog's confidence about other dogs. I need to divide and conquer. Similarly, if my dog has a concern about people, the fix is not to make it about watch me, or it is about to make it confident around people, or get it to the best of that dog's ability, okay? So, massive one, and we talked about this yesterday when I talked about confidence, was the handler's mental game. A handler's mental game can be the make or break entity between success and failure, okay? And how you think of yourself, your ability to compose yourself under pressure, your ability to focus your mind and block out all the external factors is a critical element of success in dog sports, okay? And like everything else, we invest in our training of our dog. We put time into our deportment, posture. Depending on the sport, it might have a fitness element to it. We need to be investing into our mental game as much as we would anything else. As much as we would train our dog to be in a certain optimum state of mind to perform at their best, we should be working on ourselves. So that means, being conscious of the words that you use. That means teaching yourself how to focus under pressure, putting yourself in situations that make you feel a bit uncomfortable and learning to develop the skills to focus your mind, because that is a necessary entity that will ultimately allow you to be first or last, depending on what sport you do, all right? So it's really, and I keep on harping on about it, and I talk about it regularly with my Wednesday nighters, about working on self, working on your belief system, looking at reframing things that would undermine your confidence, reframing things that will impact your self-belief, thinking of the words that you talk about yourself, and making sure you're surrounding yourself by the right community and people in your orbit that can uplift you, and having those stock phrases to rebut people that might be naysayers or, might put that doubt in your mind. Having that armor so that you can combat that stuff, okay? Another entity that can impact people, and a really common one, is experience, etiquette, and understanding the game. So there is, depending on the sport that you partake in, there's nuances, there's the unwritten rules, there's the way in which to play the game, and that can often cause people to not achieve their best or their dog to underperform. There is the unwritten rules and etiquette within the sport itself, how to play the game well. And that's the stuff that isn't necessarily in the rule book. It's the way in which you operate. And obviously, if you're going to do something that goes against the grain, something that's unorthodox, you need to make sure that you, again, from your mental game point of view, you're prepared for people maybe questioning that, pushing back on that, etc. But again, it's about being true to yourself and your belief system about how you train your dog. If you choose to, use reinforcement, in some places that might be a little bit controversial. Under some judges, they might not want you to leave the ring and feed the dog and come back in. All of that is absolutely fine, and we should be respectful of people's opinions and so forth, but you also have to be true to what is best for your dog and put your dog and your training at the forefront of your aspirations and goals, okay? So another entity that often is at play is conditioning and recovery, and that's both from a physical point of view and a mental point of view. When you start to compete, especially depending on the point of your competing journey, it can be mentally and physically draining. You have to have a level of composure, and you have to allow yourself some downtime to recover. So if you've factored into competing, especially as you progress up the ladder and to the more higher levels, that's when there can be an abundance of pressure. Trying to chase qualifiers, trying to get a dog ticket, trying to win a ticket, trying to get it to a qualifier, trying to get it to, a certain big event, trying to get it on the national team or the world team. That's when you can find that mental fatigue and physical fatigue will kick in. You have to factor that in and allow yourself and the dog some downtime. A classic mistake that people make is overtraining. Overtraining to the point of where both you and the dog are jaded by it. So one of the healthiest things is to factor in rest days. Again, if you're doing physical exercise, you would be encouraged to allow rest days. Rest days are probably as, if not more critical than the days that you work, because they allow your body to recover. That should be applicable to both your mental state, your physical state, and that of the dog, the mental state and the physical state of the dog. If you had a hard couple of days or hard couple of sessions, allow the dog a break. Go for a long walk, an off day, an easy day, so that you can both regroup, because you'll find that you'll be better for it, especially if you're on the pursuit of a specific goal. If you're aspiring to get on a team, or you're trying to get a qualifier, or you're trying to get a ticket, or you're trying to get, as I said, to a particular event, trying to qualify for crafts and move up the ladder, factor that into your process, and there will be natural times when you might have enforced rest periods, because that's what life does, but make sure if you don't, that you factor them in, okay? And the final thing that can often cause people to not realize their goals, and a common problem, is a lack of long-term planning. So failing to plan is planning to fail, is what was said, and it never true word be spoken. You really need to be thinking of your dog's career journey, however you want to frame it, map it out in your head. And whilst it's really, you can have your goals, as I said yesterday, put your goals at the back of your mind, and they should be there to motivate you. But you really need to look at your dog and plan out what you want to achieve. How is it going to work within your life, your work, your family, etc.? Because it's always about balance. And thinking about, what you want to achieve that year, and that will keep you true and keep you diligent with your training rounds and your rest days, and your, really putting, right, I'm going to chase my goals, so I'm going to be doing a lot of competing in that sense. But when you're bringing a dog into dog sports, if you want to be successful, and success is defined by the individual, it takes an intentional mindset. Yeah, what is it you're aiming to achieve? How are you going to get there? You need a map for yourself. If you don't necessarily have the experience, that's where a really good coach will really help you to achieve that and to map that out. But that's where you have to be open and honest and say, this is my goal. Goals can change. You might get more ambitious as the process goes on. You might think, actually, I want to achieve this. And that's absolutely fine. That's often the case. But if you're going to have a moving goalpost, for example, then you need to be aware of the timeline that it's going to take. You can't shift your goals and go, oh, I'm going to, I just want to, have my dog do a really good, novice round, and then that being achieved, and then go, oh, actually, I've changed my mind. I now want to do X. You need to allow for that adjustment. But planning is really, really important. And, the biggest thing that people do when they plan is they sacrifice what they want for what they want right now. Meaning, you've got to constantly remind yourself of your long-term goal and run your own race. Don't be worried about what your peers are doing per se, or the siblings of your dog is doing, or so-and-so's doing off the internet. Focus and run on your own race, because your race is the thing that you're most attached to, clearly, and also the thing that you should be most invested in. Don't worry about what that person's doing with the sibling or the cousin or the brother or that person over there who's done da-da-da. It doesn't matter. Run your own race, because, I have a podcast that says a rising tide lifts all ships. If you're doing your thing and doing it well, that will have a ripple effect to the energy that you attract and the people around you. All right? Does that all make sense to everybody? Anybody got any questions on that?
It's not a question, it's more of a statement. In as much as you can do all your planning and you know what I'm talking about, and plan well and train well, but it still doesn't work out. And that is harder, I think, to cope with.
So then it means that whilst you might be technically planning well, but you might be technically training well, then it means to have an outside person to go, is this actually the areas that I need to be working on? So that's where, having a good coach in your corner is imperative, because whilst, if I went and go, right, I'm training, I don't know, a brilliant hand touch, fantastic, I've got it, wonderful. My coach would say, well, that's fantastic, but you need to also be doing this, this, and this. And did you realize when the dog's doing that, it's doing X, Y, and Z? So that's where having the benefit of an experienced eye or somebody in your corner is going to be a game changer. You can plan, right, I'm going to plan my training session out diligently. I've got my treats, I've got my toys, fantastic, I've gone and trained. But if that isn't what you need to be working on, or you can sometimes, another common thing is people get like what I call the magpie syndrome. They get distracted by the shiny thing. So like you're working on this, but then, I'm going to get eluded by that. And it's, again, that's where you've got to be goal specific. And we've talked about that, obviously. You've got to be focused on your goal. You can have multiple goals. That's fantastic. Having multiple goals and aspirations. But you've also got to make peace with the balance between aiming for a lot of goals and being truthful and go, is this attainable with my resources, my time, etc. And also, I share openly, and I have a lot of dogs. I have different goals for all of them. I appreciate that the timeline for me to achieve all those goals is going to take longer than if I had one dog and was pursuing one endeavor. I'm really okay with that. I'm really comfortable about the time it takes me, because, again, I'm very much about running my own race. Those people that successfully compete in multiple sports and have done multiple sports, it does take juggling. It does take awareness. It does take realization of the conflict between the two entities and really mapping that out in your planning process. So it's not a case of, and again, it's reframing it of saying, don't be defeated because, inverted commas, the plan didn't work. That's part of planning. It's feedback. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mentioned it because I wanted everybody else to hear what you said to me and how, I had to change my mindset.
Yeah, it's very important to say to that point that it isn't a case of my plan has failed. It's to say the plan, now I've gone off, like I was saying yesterday about injuries. I have this aspiration. I try to do the training or whatever it is, that first step of the ladder, and invert commas, it doesn't work. It's not a case of it didn't work. That's feedback. Okay, so now I take that information. What do I do with that information? Okay, so I've now realized that let's take it back to, it's easier to explain about a physical entity. I have my dog post-injury. I now feel it's recovered. I've done the rehab, so I've done my plan. I've done it brilliantly. I've rehabbed the dog. Right, now I'm going to have to go out and actually test if this dog can be let off the lead. That's the bit where you hold your grip firmly and you hold your white knuckles and you hope for the best. Dog comes back on 3 legs. Okay, that doesn't mean that my work prior has failed. It means that I need to evolve my plan. That's what planning and data collection is. It's not a definitive, you do it right, you move forward. That would be brilliant, but that's very rarely the case. So that should be applicable. If we take that analogy about recovering from an injury and we apply that to our training, if we frame it in that way and view it as data collection as opposed to a pass or fail, that means that you're not going to take it personally.
That's your pivot.
It's a pivot. You've got to pivot. Yeah. Yeah. All right? Good. Well done. All right. So let's get all the dogs in. Let's do a little group session. We will go, yeah, because the weather's good. So let's start off in here and then we'll go outside. All right, everybody? Well done.
You have to have your tribe of people that when you're in the trenches, right, they will come to your aid. Yeah. Sometimes it's just to go, yeah, fucking have a rant at me. Sometimes it's say, don't be such a baby, pick your shit up, come on, let's get on with it. Sometimes it's to go, look, I'm here, whatever. You need space, you need those mechanisms in play, because dog sports and partaking in dog sports is really a reflection of our stuff comes bubbling to the fore. Our stuff, our, the childhood experience, your parent didn't breastfeed you, whatever the case may be, all that stuff will come bubbling to the fore. And unless you have the mechanism and the team around you to support you in the good and the bad, when you're successful, mark my words, everybody will be around you like flies on poop. Yeah, but when you're in the trenches, they'll be like, that's when you need the true people that are going to help you. And that's why, whoever you coach, work with, train with, they need to be invested. And the thing about what I say to when I coach is, I'm not there to make you what I would like my vision of you. I'm there to get you where you want to be. So just another. This was a lesson that I learned years ago. I had a student who had a phenomenal German Shepherd, and this dog could have easily been a champion. And I used to say to her, Julie, go off. You need to do training rounds. The dog was winning. I said, you need to put money back in the bank. You need to go. And she come back for her next lesson. She showed me another rosette. Oh look, she got fourth and she got fifth. I was like, what are you doing with fourth and fifth? You should have been doing training rounds, right? So we would be at somewhat conflict with each other, and that I was like, this dog could be a champion. You're not doing what I advise. So I arrogantly sent her a Dear John letter, in which I said to her, and I trained her for years, and I was like, you know what, Julia, I just don't think I can help you anymore. And I basically ditched her, right? So not somebody being quite the thing. This was in my early coaching career. Anyway, so time passes, and ironically, about 3-4 weeks after she went on and won this class, and bless her, she sent me a message saying, thank you for your help. I know that you've been helped, blah, 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 right? Off we trundle. A year goes by, or the end of the season comes, and the last show that we have is outdoors, and it was in October, so it's like torrential rain, pissing down, freezing cold. Turn up for the show, and Julie's there parking cars in her high-vis jackets. Julie's in her 80s, 70s or 80s. So she's parking cars, da da da. And anyway, so I do the show, we finish the day, as we're pulling out, she's seeing people off the venue. Day 2, same thing, she's parking cars. Day 3, she isn't parking cars as we leave, she's picking up the shit bags, or the rubbish bags that they put in the skip, because she was part of that committee, so she was helping. And I thought, in that moment, I thought, you arrogant dick, right? This is not about rosettes to her, this is her way of life. Her husband had passed away. This was so much more than a trivial, stupid rosette. And it was like a real slap in the face moment going, who the hell do you think you are to push your ego and what you think that person should achieve? Because all she wants to do is see her friends on the weekend. And her joy was seeing her friends, being social and taking home a little rosette with her little dog. That was it.
And if you think of the demographics of us in dog sport, we know the demographic of person that comes here. And they're often like women who are living on their own. And their dog.
And it's a social thing. And I arrogantly, and it was so humbling, I thought, who the hell am I to define what she just does as success? So again, talking about coaching, make sure that you find somebody that understands what you want. Not everybody wants to go to the World Championships. Not everybody wants a champion. They just want to go and have a good day with their dog. And that's absolutely fine. Because then I can alter how we get you to that point. Do you know what? It's not sitting brilliant, but screw it. Go and have a crack. Have a great day. Get a little rosette, whatever. Just every now and again you'll win. If that's what you want, I can get you there. But again, it's about being where you have to be as a pupil. You have to be truthful with yourself. You can't say I'm happy with having a go and then secretly go, but I really want to win. You go, that might be in conflict, you have to be truthful. And the thing is, you can evolve you can go, do you know what, I thought I just wanted to have a crack. I was just having a good day. Actually, I quite like this running thing, that's fine, let's pause the brakes, let's go and get your foundations better, and then we'll come back and do more of this.
The woman that was coaching me when I went to my first nationals, she said to me the day I left, she rang me up, she goes, I just want you to go with an open mind. People that win everything usually will go there and not win a thing, and vice versa. And I went in there and I won out of the agility heats, the first and third heat. And it was really funny because you knew exactly who was in your corner.
Yeah.
And like, you know, Nat Kirkwood, Simone Holt, and that. And I had one woman who, she came in fourth, and she came up, she tapped me on the shoulder and she said, my dog would have shit all over your dog if he had have gone clear.
Right. But he didn't, sweetheart, so stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
And I was so shocked. I went, oh, okay. They're lining up for the photo. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
And I went over and I just went, oh, you should have shown. And honestly, I think you'd have to restrain Simone Holt. Don't even put this on social media. No, I think you're going to have to restrain her because she was just like,
Yeah.
Everybody calm down.
Yeah.
It was just funny. Wow.
Yeah, you know, that's part and parcel of the game. Like the conversation I will have with Sally, as I said, the dynamics will change now. I said, now that people see you're in a different level of competition, you need to be, and Sally's no fool, she's quite switched on, so she'll be fine. But, you know, that's a part and parcel of it. But it's coming back to the original point of, competing, there's so many facets to it, and mental game preparation is part of it. You know, working on your self-confidence. Self-confidence comes from putting those worms that you tell yourself about, what you can't do, you need to reframe that, you need to work on that. If you're a person that lacks confidence, surround yourself with people that will help you develop the confidence. Again, competing requires honesty. You need to be truthful with yourself and go, am I putting the work in? When I have competed a lot, when I've done martial arts, my instructor would always he'd give us things and he would be quite, militant about what we are. He said, you don't have to do the work. He said, you don't have to do that extra sprint. It's not a problem to me. He says, because it's not me that's going into fight. So the only person you're cheating is yourself. So if you don't want to do that extra bit of work, no problem. I'm not going to get on your case. This is what I've asked you to do. You don't want to do it. You don't want to give 100%. It's not a problem, because where that will come to haunt you is when you're facing somebody else that has got 100% in. So that's the way in which I frame things. Have I put the work in? Have I done my due diligence? So when you're talking about preparation for competition, that all is part of it. All this stuff. And then making sure parallels that you're working on your self-confidence, your self-belief. All the things that we tell ourselves that chip away at our confidence. I'm very aware of how I speak of myself, because you're literally creating that pattern in your brain. You're believing that you are, somebody who say, oh, I'm old, or like, I'm this, I'm that. Don't. If you keep telling yourself that, the biggest person that's going to be listening to you is you. Like, why would you say that about yourself? You're limiting what you're able to do. Reframe it. If you find the first thing is to acknowledge, I have that as a default. Maybe you do it as a way to alleviate pressure. Maybe you do it to to minimize or to justify whatever. Think about why you're doing it and deal with that as a core issue. And make sure that you are. The thing is, as I said to somebody, I would love to say that this is all going to take you 5 minutes. It isn't. But sometimes it's hard work.
Well, it never stops. The foundations never stop.
But I don't look at it as hard work. I just work at it. That's part of the process. I love training, obviously, and I love foundation. I could do it quite happily all day, every day. But it isn't going to necessarily be always easy, but it'll be worth it. Because this stuff is really about. It's a sense of self-achievement. That stupid little thing that you have. I was talking about my boxer. I said, that dog and what he did was, in the grand scheme of competing, was actually quite trivial. But for me, it was such a sense of achievement because it was about overcoming adversity. It was about getting knocked down and getting up again. So I know who I am in the face of adversity because that dog showed me that. I know I have one more rep in me. I can go again. I can pick myself up again. I know who I am.
Is that boxer handler trait, Sue? Because Peter talks about owning her boxer with the same kind of sentiment as well.
And people tell me you can't do that with a boxer.
Definitely.
I've got a lot of that.
Yeah.
and that's what set me on my path. Was the first dog that I trained was I went to dog club and the chief instructor said to me, "You'll never do any good with a box," and I went,
Yeah, game on.
Hold my bees.
And I mean, even like, when I went to Camden, Susan said to me, "Why did you get a boxer to do IGP?" I was like, "Well, I just like them. I like the breed." So that was always my thing. I just like the breed. And I did want to, I definitely had dizzy aspirations for that dog. But as I said, I was talking about him, I can't remember if it's dinner or whatever, I had to realign those and go, that wasn't that dog's lesson. Yeah, it wasn't ego, it wasn't, the first of anything. That wasn't what he was about. It was about overcoming adversity. And that in itself was a lesson, a lot of, self-discovery. And it has made me definitely a better coach and definitely a better teacher.
Yeah.
And it was a lesson to be learned. So as I said, the more dogs that you have, the more lessons you have. And I think it's really important to that's why I keep doing it. It's not about that per se. It's about, what is this? What's the new experience? What is the new journey? Because there's no, like, it isn't about, rosettes are great, etc. But it's really about our, it's that sense of personal achievement, really, for me. Yeah. Anybody got questions on that?
No, that was great.
All right. Good.